The wind is coming hard off the North Sea, and a man named Taming is walking home along the shore road on the Orkney island of Sunday. Sometime in the black hours before dawn, the moon is low and yellow, laying a thin strip of light across the water. On his right, the sea. On his left, a freshwater loch. He's walking the narrow strip of land between them, because that is the only road there is. He hears it before he sees it. A sound like a horse breathing, but wrong. Wet. Too large. Something's coming up out of the tide. And it's not two animals. It's one body, and the moonlight catches it. And Taming sees that it has no skin. Black blood moves under yellow-white sinew. A single red eye, red as coal, sits on a head too big for the neck holding it, and that head rolls from shoulder to shoulder like it might come loose. The shape that should be a rider grows straight out of the horse's back. No hips, no legs of its own, arms long enough to drag the sand. Taming has nowhere to go but forward or into the sea. So he does the one thing every child on that island was raised to do. He says a prayer out loud, and he starts moving toward the loch, towards the fresh water, because there is exactly one thing this creature cannot follow him through. It gains on him. He feels the heat of its breath, hears the whale-wide mouth of its snapping air behind his neck, and then his boots hit the shallows, and he throws himself across, and behind him the thing skids to a stop on the sand, like it was hit with a wall, screaming in a register that isn't a horse's scream and isn't a man's either. It reaches once and takes his bonnet off his head with the tip of one long claw, and then it is gone, back down into the water it came from. Taming made it home. He told the story to a farmer and folklorist named Walter Traill Dennison, who wrote it down almost word for word, which is the only reason we still have it more than 100 years later. Taming wasn't drunk, he was confused. And as far as his neighbors were concerned, he wasn't lying either. He had met the Nuckelavee, and he had lived to describe it, because he remembered the one rule every Orcadian child grew up on. Never let it catch you on dry land between the salt and the fresh.
There are fae and cryptid, lores and legends, of which there are skeptics and cynics of all kinds. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Beth.
And we are between the myth and belief. Okay, that I don't know. I feel like I've heard of it. And why is it making me think of Meg from Legend?
I don't really know.
Because Meg does not look like what you described, but that was what I could think of. Just the slimy grossness of it.
So you never heard of the Nuckelavee?
I don't think I have.
Good. That's
Though at first I thought you were going for a Kelpie.
No.
That's where I thought it was going at first. So I have our calendar of the weird. All right, ghosties, stargazers, and weirdos, it is time for everyone's, maybe not everybody's, but it's one of my favorite parts of the show. The calendar of the weird, paranormal, and astrological. So we are going to start looking at this 2-week stretch from August 9th to the 22nd, 2022, if you're listening in the future. And I need to warn you right now, August 12th is gonna be one of the most intense cosmic and high strangeness days of the entire decade. So grab your salt, your non-cultural appropriation sage, your telescopes, and let's jump in. On August 9th through the 11th, it starts off under a sliver of a waning dark moon. In the folk tradition and the occult lore, this dark sky window right before a solar eclipse is the prime time for banishing negative attachments, doing dream work, and clearing out lingering house spirits. On Wednesday, August 12th, and folks, I'm going to tell you, this one is amazing. 3 major events are going to be hitting the skies within a 24-hour period. First, before sunrise, 6 planets, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, are lining up in a massive planetary parade. The next day is going to be a total eclipse, a total solar eclipse, which is going to hit Greenland, Iceland, and northern Spain, which is going to plunge that area into complete darkness. So astrologically speaking, an eclipse in Leo at the new dark moon is a massive cosmic reset button. So here we go. This is the kind of like a wild portal where like old ego structures will shatter and hidden truths will get exposed. And if that weren't enough, on the 12th through the 13th, our yearly Perseid meteor shower is going to hit its absolute peak. The eclipse in the new moon is going to leave the sky pitch dark, so you should be able to see up to 100 shooting stars for an hour raining down from the skies. Ancient sky watchers believed that meteor showers under a dark moon were literal tears from the spirit realm, making it a powerful night for manifestations and fire magic. So then on the 15th, we get and I'm going to mess this up, guys, the heliacal rising of Sirius. The moment the brightest star in our night sky returns to the dawn. So this will this has been celebrated by the ancient Egyptians, and it is considered a portal for high spiritual energy. On Monday, the 17th is, hey, Poe, laying over there on the cot, it is National Black Cat Appreciation Day, and our Poe is a black cat. She's our baby. So give some extra love to your favorite void and pay respect to the familiar spirits that keep negative energy out of your house. On the 18th, and this one I thought was kind of funny, is National Bad Poetry Day. So either Vogan or whatever bad poetry, you go for it. I don't have poetry. All my poetry is bad poetry. So there you go. Thursday, August 20th brings the first quarter moon. And the moon is building in light and power, making Thursday night a prime window for tarot, psychic readings, and spell work. And finally, on Saturday, August 22nd, we wrap up with a weird folk favorite, Southern Hemisphere Hootie Hoo Day. Tradition dictates that exactly at 12 noon, you step outside, throw your hands in the air, and yell, Hootie Hoo, at the top of your lungs to banish bad vibes and lingering spirits. Northern or Southern Hemisphere, just go for it. Yell. You've earned it. Honestly, scream at the void. I think it's cathartic, and we all kind of need that. So whether you yell Hootie Hoo or you yell fuck you, just go for it. Hey, I did poetry. A little bit of rhyming there. All of our links to these, well, there really aren't many events, but we'll provide links in the show notes. So that's all I've got.
So it is a Scottish cryptid, basically. But it's a tale that's followed this creature around for like 130 something years. Before I go in any further into it, I want to put my hands on the ground it comes from, because it only makes sense once you understand where you're standing. So Orkney is not the Scottish Highlands. It isn't heather and glens, it's an archipelago of roughly 70 islands off the northeast tip of mainland Scotland.
Okay, kind of like where the Selkies.
Right.
The Falklands.
I was kind of going with the duality of that because this is that other side.
Yeah, because the Selkies are pretty chill.
Right. So most of them are low, green, and almost entirely without trees. Because the wind simply doesn't permit trees on the islands.
Yes.
The soil is very thin, the winters are long and dark, and the summers are short and very bright. And the sea is never more than a few minutes walk away from anywhere you'd want to build a house. So for most of its history, Orkney wasn't culturally Scottish at all. It really belonged to Norway.
Okay.
And then from the Norse earldom, or from something like 600 years ago before it was handed to the Scottish crown in the 15th century as part of a royal dowry that never really got paid off. So what you get in Orcadia, I keep saying it, I want to say Arcadia.
But Orcadia.
Yeah, Orcadia folklore isn't generic Celtic myth with a Scottish accent. It's actually its own braid. It's more Norse water spirits and Pictish with Celtic ghost stories.
Okay.
So it's laid over with a very specific hard way of life, that farming on very thin soil, on that narrow margin of land that you have between the sea and whatever water feeds your crops. And that sea could feed you or kill you in the same afternoon. So it's a hard life. And I think a lot of times we see that hard life translates into a cryptid of some kind.
Again, this is very similar to what we saw with the Selkies.
Sure.
You had that hard life.
In your case, it was a benevolent spirit.
Yes.
Whereas in this case, it's more of a death by attrition.
Well, and also, I feel like with these Selkies, it was them making sense of something that they were actually seeing with the other travelers in the sealskin boats and coats, where we'll see what this brings.
Yeah. So the economy of the place was, for the most period, what historians call a crofting economy. That is, small tenant farms, often on land that had been worked continuously since the Iron Age. Supplemented by fishing, almost a lot of fishing, or by gathering shellfish off the rocks at low tide, and later by the kelp industry, which I'll get into in a bit.
Okay.
And there hasn't been much margin for error built into any of it. So a bad harvest didn't mean tightening your belt for a season. It meant a genuine famine. Okay. So it could devastate an entire community. A sick horse in a place where a horse was often the only draft animal a household had for plowing could mean that a field simply didn't get worked that year. So every part of daily survival was tied directly to weather, to the sea's mood, and neither of those things gave anyone much warning before it turned hostile.
Kind of like us and our inability to mow because it's always raining.
That is true, because we live in a microclimate rainforest, which is the dumbest thing ever.
It's good and it's bad.
No, I don't like it.
Well,
I hate it.
I don't mind it. I actually enjoy it a lot, but also I like the rain.
I like the rain. I just don't like the constant monsoons that happen.
They only happen in the evening. We're due for another one today. It's the summertime monsoons.
It's thundering out there. I know. Earlier. So every culture that lives that close to the ocean produces stories about what's out past the tide line. Orkney's is the Nuckelavee. And I don't know if that's an accident or not. This is a community whose survival depended on reading the sea correctly, every single day, for 1,000 years. So it makes sense that the worst thing they could imagine didn't come from the hills or the land, it came from the water. Because that's the unknown. That's the scary bit.
Can't see what's below.
One more thing about that Norse inheritance before I move on is the Orkney had its own language for centuries. It was Norn. It was a North Germanic tongue descended from Old Norse.
Okay.
And it survived in everyday speech well into the 18th century, before it finally died out under pressure from the Scots themselves.
Okay, because I was going to say, did it die out the way they were trying to kill out the Welsh language?
Pretty much. I mean, it was colonized.
Okay.
You know? So in this case, it was the Scots who did it. Most of it is gone now, but pieces of it are fossilized in exactly the vocabulary we're using tonight.
Oh, okay.
Mither, Tro, the names of local sea spirits. These aren't costume words borrowed for atmosphere. They're literally the words, the functioning remains of a language that these stories are first told in.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about the Nuckelavee, we're in a very literal sense still speaking a little bit of Norn.
Okay.
So the word itself is unstable, which is usually a good sign you're looking at something old or mostly oral in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Dennison, writing in 1891 in a piece called Orkney, Folklore and Sea Myths, or just Folklore Sea Myths, traced it back to an older Orcadian word, Nuckelavee. I know it's weird.
But it's spelled much different.
I know,
Yeah.
but it's Nuckelavee, which he translated as devil of the sea,
Okay.
which is like the chicken of the sea,
but
but
not as
far
tasty.
more malevolent. Some later folklorists have drawn a line from that word towards the Norse Nook, a water spirit found across Scandinavian tradition. I'm doing great on these pronunciations, by the way. I am not doing great. I'm just saying it so that my wife thinks so.
I can see her little.
Stop looking at my stuff.
Well, it's hard to know. I can't read it, but I could see that there's little notations.
There are, but I'm doing it badly, and that's okay. So the Nook is a water spirit found across Scandinavia tradition, though that connection is more suggestive than proven.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be honest with you about that rather than hand you like a tidier etymology than actually exists. These are oral traditions. They are not stable. There's no, there's nothing that's documented enough for you to know everything about these things.
Yeah.
And that's why oral is great for passing things down. It is terrible for retention.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because it becomes a giant,
And
ancient game of telephone in which nothing is the same as how it started.
I get that, but also I tend to remember things that I say out loud that more so than if I've read it.
Sure, but you have nothing to refer back to. You can only refer to living memory.
True.
So with oral, it's all got to be living memory passed down to the next living memory recipient.
Okay.
After that, there is nothing to go back to it because those people are dead. Deader than any other dead things ever. Just
they are the
dead.
deadest of dead.
Right. So what's better documented and what I can find more interesting is how people talked around the name. So islanders largely didn't say Nuckelavee out loud if they could help it. I think that's a common stigma. You just don't
want to
name
say
it.
the name.
Yeah, you don't name it. They said that thing. And honestly, if you saw one, that would be the thing you would do is like, what the hell is that thing?
Exactly.
You know, it's an automatic reaction. They said nothing at all, or they just made the sign against it or muttered a short prayer under their breath. Personally, I would be screaming and running away. I think that's my best tactic. This is not unique to Orkney. You can find naming taboos like this all over the world. We know that from the Native American traditions.
Mm-hmm.
You don't name the thing. You can make it stronger.
Oh,
for
yeah.
a certain cryptid that we're not going to talk about.
Yeah, we don't talk about it. I mean, we will probably at some point
We'll talk
about
it, but right now
in
we're
a
not gonna
roundabout
just
name.
it. Yeah, we're not just going to name it. As secular as I am, I don't go around just naming things.
I'm see where you're a little stitious. I am definitely superstitious, so I will not. I will definitely err on the side of caution.
I'm stitious appropriate. Some scholars of folk belief have argued that avoiding a monster's name functioned as kind of a low-grade magical hygiene. You don't call attention to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's inviting trouble. You just don't try to get its notice. Keep your mouth quiet as your footsteps. I think that was their given is be as quiet as your footsteps. Stop making noise. Silence is a big thing. It's a big thing in folklore. It's a big thing in a lot of things. In society, silence is used to empower the oppressor. And in many ways, in folklore, it's the same thing.
Oh, yeah, because you're bringing attention to yourself. But it's funny because as we've been doing our research, and when it comes to these cryptids and the whole rules of how you don't get its attention anymore, all I can think of is you don't tug on Superman's cape, you don't spit into the wind, you don't pull the mask off the old ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim. Yeah.
Great. That song's going to be stuck in my head. That's not going to be good. I'm going to be singing it.
I know.
So I'm not going to tell you that worked, keeping quiet. I am going to tell you that the impulse behind it, the idea that language itself can be a small act of self-protection, like I said, it shows up again and again. Mm-hmm. It's part of, I think, the magic. Yeah. I just think that's the way it is. There are rules to magic, much like there are rules to science. Mm-hmm. There are rules to electricity. Yep. You have laws. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the laws is magic is names have power.
They do.
And using the name can have effect, whether good or bad. And you don't always get to choose.
Nope.
Your intent doesn't necessarily create anything.
Yes.
So I'm going to tell you about the impulse behind it. The idea that language itself can be a small act of self-protection is that if you don't believe a word said out loud can summon anything, it probably won't. But if you have a small belief, that is where you get into problems. And if you're nervous and you're thinking about it and you name it.
Oh my God. Ray, what did you do, Ray?
Exactly. So we have the Ray effect, which is, we don't want to summon the thing.
So we think about the most innocuous, the innocuous thing we could think of, and it becomes a 70-foot giant marshmallow man.
Yes, exactly. So I've said Dennison's name a few times already, and I want to give him a proper introduction because almost everything solid we have on this creature runs through one farmer from a small island. Mm-hmm. From one island. So Walter Traill Dennison was born in 1825 on Sanday. The same island that Tamay, I'm saying Tamay because it phonetically said Tamay. Mm-hmm. But it just says Tammy. So I feel like I'm saying Jamay.
Jamay.
So I feel weird doing that. But we're going to just go with it. So Tamay was walking home in our cold open, and he spent most of his life there working the land. He was not a university folklorist swooping in from Edinburgh to collect quaint tales from the natives, which is exactly the kind of outside collector a lot of 19th century folklore comes to us through. Often it's filtered and romanticized and occasionally invented outright, to please a mainland audience. Dennison was the opposite of that. He was from the place. He actually spoke the dialect, and he spent his later years specifically trying to preserve Orcadian oral tradition and the Orcadian dialect itself before both disappeared under the pressure of those standardized Scots and English schooling. Mm-hmm. So both of those things caused a lot of problems for the people there. And he was doing I think he was doing a benefit in that we have even the stories that we have, that they're even remembered at all.
Yeah.
He published collections under titles like the Orcadian Sketchbook, and it's in a piece he wrote for a periodical called the Scottish Antiquary in 1891, titled Orkney Folklore Sea Myths. And that is the fullest surviving account of the Nuckelavee, including Tamay's story as it first appears in print.
Wow.
Yeah. And I bring this up because it matters about how much weight I'm willing to put on the details. Mm-hmm. When folklore gets filtered through an outsider with a publishing deadline and an audience that wants They're monsters all tidy and marketable. It's like the movie version of a monster has to have some resellability for merchandise.
Yeah.
You want it on the t-shirts. You want the little figurine.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't so much. So these details get flattened out. They get sanded down and digestible. And Dennison had no reason to do that. He was writing for a small antiquarian journal, recording material for his own neighbors. Those are for his people, in something close to their own words. And that doesn't make the Nuckelavee real. What it does do is it makes it as close to an unfiltered 19th century Orcadian voice as we're going to get on the subject. I think that's worth knowing beforehand, before you hear the rest of this tale.
Okay, so he like Brothers Grimm'd it.
He really did, because he's part of the community. Mm-hmm. He's not separate from it.
So he wasn't exactly Brothers Grimming it, but he's still collecting.
But he's from there. He's from the same soil. He's from the same fears.
Yeah.
And those play a real part in how you relate a tale. Like me talking about this, I mean, I could do the orchestra, I could do the whisper at the start for the cold open. I wanted to do it differently this time, because everything is theater when you're talking on a podcast. But I think sometimes I don't want to imitate the idea of someone's community that's already gone. Mm-hmm. And I think it's weird for me. So I just chose not to do it this time.
Yeah.
I think talking about the Nuckelavee is enough without having to resort to theatrics for it. Mm-hmm. We should be able to hear the words.
True.
I can't do them justice, so me trying would be an injustice.
Yeah.
And that's the way I'm just going to take it this time. Next time, I'll do all the things and make it sound horrible. So now let's actually look at the theme, because the physical description is, frankly, one of the most disturbing in the whole catalog of British folklore. And I don't say that lightly, because there's a lot. Mm-hmm. But on land, the Nuckelavee appears like a horse, or like someone suggested a horse at one time and then stripped it away. But it also appears as a rider, fused into that horse into a single organism.
That's messed up.
It's got a hump. Not two creatures traveling together. It's one. And the lower body is horse-like. Sometimes described with small fin-like flippers, which sounds cute, but it is not. Near the legs, a nod to its true home in the sea. Its mouth is described as wide as a whale's.
Wow.
Now, I imagine they're talking about the smaller whales, but still, that's a lot.
That's still a lot.
Yeah. And the breath that comes out of its mouth is like steam off a boiling kettle. Hot, foul, and as we'll get to, actively toxic to crops and livestock.
Ew.
So I've met people like that. It has a single burning red eye, which seems like it's the main problem of its ire. It's always got this red eye that no one wants to help him with.
So that's the lower half, right?
That's the lower half.
Okay.
We're getting to the top half.
Okay. So it only has one eye then? In the bottom half?
I guess that's the way it keeps describing.
I know. I'm just asking. I'm going
to tell you.
It's got some bad pink eye.
Yeah. Where a rider's torso should sit is not a separate person. The upper body grows directly out of the horse's spine, or what you would suppose is the spine. No hips, no legs of its own, because it doesn't need them. The horse below is legs enough. The arms, though, are long enough in most tellings to reach the ground while it's standing.
Ew.
So that top torso has very long arms. I imagine to grab things with.
Yeah.
And the head, one account describes as being the size of a clew of Simmons. Now, a Simmons is a coiled bundle of straw rope, and it's a common Orcadian household item. So it means it's enormous and round, and it doesn't sit still. It rolls from one shoulder to the other.
Yeah.
Like the neck can't quite hold its weight, And it's always like a moment from just tipping off entirely. And then there's the detail that, for my money, is the one that actually separates this creature from basically everything else in the water horse family across the British Isles. It has no skin. It's like, what is it, Slim Goodbody?
Oh my God, Slim Goodbody.
Yeah, except not anywhere near as fun, I guess. There's no skin anywhere. What you're looking at, if you're unlucky enough to be looking at it, is exposed. You see black blood visibly moving through pale yellow veins, raw muscle, glistening sinew, working in full view every time it moves. So you see the individual strands moving as it flexes or chases after you.
So I made the mistake of...
You should not look it up.
I wanted to see...
That's a bad idea.
And people, this is our artists' renditions, and honestly, folks, some of these are really fucking nightmare fuel.
Okay, well, you'll have to copy the link.
Yeah.
So now that I can provide it, now that you mentioned
All it was I just Googled it.
you're going to have to give a link.
There's no, is there a link to?
Get a link and then
Okay.
show, and so we can show them.
Okay. Ew.
Don't argue with me. Just do it.
I personally like the one with the beak, though.
Okay, there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So most water horse legends give you something beautiful and wrong. A gorgeous black stallion that turns out to be a killer, but instead the Nuckelavee skips that beautiful part entirely.
It's just like, I'm horrifying and I'm going to show it.
Oh yeah, it goes straight to wrong. That's exactly where it goes. There is no moment of being fooled by it. It looks exactly as dangerous as it is.
Mm-hmm.
At least it's honest in its appearance. It's not trying to fool you. It's not trying to give you a siren song. It is actively coming after you. It's mad. It's pissed off. It's got a red eye that no one wants to cure, and it has no skin. It's very upset at everything.
But I kind of, this is actually very similar to the thing we won't name.
Yeah.
In how it is
horrifying. Except it does not change shape.
Well, yes, but also it's horrifying in its natural state. And yeah, no, I get that. I kind of appreciate a cryptid that doesn't make me want to cuddle it. Looking at you once again, Mothman.
I still think Mothman's a good guy.
I
you
know.
Can't have a butt like that and not want it patted.
I want to cuddle it and
Okay. So a handful of later retellings add a pig-like snout to the face. And a few collectors recorded variants where the breath alone is described as visible, a kind of low steam that clung to the ground ahead of it as it moved. And I want to flag that as a variant rather than a core feature because this is one of the honest complications of oral folklore. You're not dealing with a single fixed monster design the way you would with like a published creature where you have like something written down on paper and you can read it over and over again and that's what it is.
Yeah.
If someone describes a unicorn in a book, you read the unicorn description. You quote it back to someone else, they read that same book, they have the same description.
Mm-hmm.
Not so with the Nuckelavee.
Yes.
We do not have that. So you're dealing with a regional description that shifted slightly from parish to parish, from teller to teller, decade to decade, and the version that Dennison wrote down from taming and from a man he calls Thomas is the fullest and most consistent one we have. So that's the version that's doing all the work tonight.
Okay.
A creature like this doesn't just lurk and startle the occasional traveler on a shore road. In the Orcadian imagination, the Nuckelavee had a job, and that job was unmitigated disaster.
Ew.
It was blamed for drought, for blighted crops, failed harvests, whole seasons gone bad in ways that had nothing to do with anyone's farming. And most seriously, it was blamed for a specific livestock plague Islanders called mortician, which by most accounts wiped out horses in particular during certain bad years, which you can imagine was a very big problem for plowing.
Yes. Which is why you mentioned a sick horse earlier. I was like,
right.
That was vaguely specific.
It was very specific for this reason. The mechanism in the folklore is that steam kettle breath, it exhaled a poison, drifting onto pasture land, and was thought to sicken and kill animals directly. And in the worst versions of the story, people as well. So Dennison's own phrase for it, and it stuck with me after the first few times of reading it, is that the Nuckelavee was a creature of unmixed malignity.
Unmixed malignity. That is a mouthful.
It is. I want you to notice how unusual that actually is inside the wider folklore of water spirits. Like kelpies can be bargained with, and in some tellings even bridled and tamed. Selkies, which we've talked about on this show, are often sympathetic, sometimes tragic, and they're adorable.
They are.
Fairy folk across the British Isles operate by rules. Obscure ones, sure, but rules. And if you learn them, sometimes you can come out ahead or just escape with your life.
Yeah.
The Nuckelavee doesn't offer that deal at all. There's no trick. There's not a bargain to be had. There's no version of this story in which cleverness wins you anything.
It's just downright evil.
No. And it really comes down to how fast can you run to fresh water?
Not very fast. Can't run.
You said that fast. Much like something I've heard on television or something where, oh no, it's the TikTok guy he whispers, he makes jokes and he whispers the responses to his own.
Oh no, I don't know. I think I know that one.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that kind of reminds me of that. So yeah, it's simply bad all the way through, and there's nothing held back for negotiation. It's all out trying to kill you.
Damn.
That is its job. That's its thing. It wants to make life miserable by making your life end.
Yeah, I don't like things that don't have rules.
Well, it's rare.
Guidelines or...
luckily it is a rare thing that doesn't want to bargain.
Yeah.
In some way. This is this isn't Freddy Krueger. This is Jason. Just relentlessly trying to kill you. It doesn't want to talk. It just wants you dead. Freddy just wants to talk to you and maybe
play games.
Yeah, play games. That's not the thing here. That is not happening.
Yeah.
When a culture builds something with absolutely no redeeming angle, I think it's worth asking what real, ongoing, unbargainable threat are we actually describing? So what is it? What is an analogy for?
What is its motive? Yeah, what is its,
What is the analogy?
Yeah.
What is it being the analogy for?
Yeah.
Think about what Mortashine actually meant for a household that depended on a single horse for plowing thin, difficult margins of land. Losing that animal wasn't just a sentimental loss. It was potentially the difference between a working farm and a failed one for years afterwards. So a story that names the exact specific catastrophic thing you're most afraid of losing and gives that fear a face.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's basically naming death. Because there's a good chance that, failed farm and a little tiny island, which is probably already barely eking out a survival based on location, and you're losing your part of your livelihood or your ability to have any livelihood, it could be a death sentence. So you've just basically embodied a creature of like plague and death.
Well, it's doing something that a purely abstract worry, like bad luck, can't do.
Yeah.
Abstract dread doesn't have rules that you can follow.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. A named monster does. And a monster with rules, even if it's cruel and unbargainable ones, is easier to live alongside than a fear with no shape at all. So if you have that fear, it's better to name the fear than to not name it.
Oh, yeah, because they couldn't control whether or not the horses got sick or whether or not their crops failed, but they could have this creature that there was an escape
Yeah.
If you did this, you could escape it, where there's a good chance you weren't going to be able to escape the reality. I get that.
Yeah, it gives you something to fight.
Yeah, and people need hope, so even if there's a slim piece of hope.
Yeah, or something to blame.
Or something to blame.
Sure.
Definitely need something to blame.
So here's where the story gets, I would say, elegant is a good word, in a way that a lot of old folk cosmology turns out to be elegant once you look at the whole structure instead of just the monster itself. So the Nuckelavee wasn't understood to be loose year-round.
Okay.
Orcadia's sea lore held that the ocean itself was governed by two competing forces. One was the Mither of the sea, a benevolent maternal spirit who held power through the warmer months and kept the sea and everything dangerous inside of it relatively calm.
Okay.
All right. Her counterpart, Teran, that's a local dialect word meaning roughly a furious anger. Possibly related to a Norse word for angry.
Okay.
So just so you're aware, was a hostile winter force who fought her for control as the seasons turned. When Teran's power was ascendant in the cold months, the Mither's grip loosened, and that included her ability to keep the Nuckelavee contained beneath the waves. Winter, in other words, was when the thing got out.
That makes sense, because that is when the ocean is at its most deadly. So, yeah.
Yeah. The two of them were said to meet twice a year, right around the equinox, in battles with their own names. The spring clash, when Mither claws back control from Teran and the seas turn calm again, is called the Voitali, which is spring struggle, is what it means.
Okay.
The autumn rematch, when Teran wins back and storms roll in for the dark half of the year, is called Gorveli, which is autumn tumult.
Okay, so it's like when you said the autumn rematch, I'm like, and you can get it at pay-per-view.
Exactly. But it is a lot like that. These are contests.
Yeah.
To see, and ultimately they're always going to win. And if you look at it, it is a lot like almost every other tale of seasonal change.
I was going to say Persephone and Demeter, and it's got the seasonal.
And we have the Fae. You have the
yep.
winter. You have winter and you have summer. You have the courts and stuff. So you have the unseelie and the seelie courts and that kind of thing. And none of them are necessarily benevolent, but sure.
Yes.
Some tellings give Teran a body of his own for these fights, as a huge, cold-eyed sea monster, tentacled, armored in barnacles, thrashing the water hard enough to explain on its own why the equinox bring the worst weather of the year. So, bad weather at sea.
Davy Jones having a temper tantrum.
Sure. Every unseasonal storm afterwards in this system was read as Teran testing his bonds at the bottom of the sea. I don't really think I need to explain to you why that maps so cleanly onto real Orcadian life. Winter is when things go wrong.
Yep.
And when they go wrong, it's deadly. So storms are worse. Food stores are at their thinnest. Disease in livestock and in people spread very fast because you're crowded together indoors. Oftentimes they have their cattle or what animals they have indoors with them.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of crowding. It's cold and it's damp. The folklore didn't invent that danger. It organized it. It gave it a community, a seasonal calendar for real risk. It's a good way to explain. Winter is where the trouble is.
Oh, yeah.
That's where you have to be on your ball. You have to be aware of what's happening. It's not a time to relax. So it's wrapped in a story specific and vivid enough that a child could actually remember it. Watch yourself near the shore in winter, because that's when she loses her grip and he gets out. It's not a superstitious standing in opposition to good sense. In a lot of cases, once you dig into it, that's good sense wearing a costume. Which brings us back to the detail that saved Tame's life and shows up as the load-bearing rule in nearly every Nuckelavee story that's survived. It cannot cross fresh water. Some versions extend it even further, saying it couldn't come ashore at all while it was raining, that the touch of fresh water on its exposed skinless body was actively repellent, maybe even harmful to it. As a piece of folklore mechanics, this is doing some real work. It gives the story a escape hatch.
Mm-hmm.
Without it, you're just running in circles screaming.
Yeah, this thing's going to hunt your ass down.
Right. So every good cautionary tale needs that escape hatch, because a story with generally no way to survive doesn't get told by the people who could have died in it.
Yeah. We've played those D&D games.
Right. It also draws a very clean symbolic line. Salt water is its home and its power. Fresh water is the boundary of human territory, of drinkable, farmable, livable land, and the creature simply cannot cross that line. It's a threshold.
Yeah, and we have many cryptids who have an inability to cross running water or fresh water, but even in the opposite, where they can't be around salt water.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'll say this as someone who works with a lot of inherited protective folklore practice in my own life. The idea that a body of water, a threshold, a line you draw and don't cross can function as protection. It shows up constantly across wildly unconnected traditions.
Mm-hmm.
It's a device for stopping something that's pursuing you. I'm not telling you that fresh water will stop a demon. I've never met the demon in question, but I will tell you that's when the exact same protective motive turns up independently in dozens of folk traditions.
Looking at you, Ichabod Crane.
Right. It's a real observable pattern on how human beings think about danger and boundaries. And I don't think it deserves to be waved off just because the explanation on offer happens to be a skinless horse demon instead of a germ.
Yeah.
You know, there is a more grounded practical reading available here, and I don't think we have to choose between the symbolic one and this one. A creature this closely tied to the sea, even in a folklore sense, staying near salt water and being repelled by fresh water and rain is a pretty efficient way of keeping a nighttime cautionary tale confined to exactly the terrain where real nighttime danger actually lived.
Mm-hmm.
You know, coastal paths in Orkney run along cliff edges, tidal flats, unstable ground that floods and shifts. A story that keeps its horror concentrated along the shoreline and gives you an escape route the moment you move inland towards freshwater is also not entirely by accident. A story that nudges frightened people towards safer ground. Mm-hmm. It's just common sense.
Oh, yeah, and you also know you're not going to wake up and see one standing over your bed.
Sure. I don't think that Tammy's neighbors sat down and engineered that on purpose. I think that's what happens naturally when a story gets refined by hundreds of retellings from people who actually knew that coastline. Generation after generation quietly correcting the details that didn't match lived experience and keeping the ones that did.
Mm-hmm.
So that oral tradition was really about protecting the people from themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense.
From their environment. Don't run towards the ocean. You need to run inland.
Yeah.
Stay away from the edge of the cliff. I mean, how many people do we have falling off the
Oh my God, the waterfalls around here are always every summer.
We need a great retelling here of a folk tradition that keeps people off the foot.
Every summer we hear the rescue helicopter going up the mountain because somebody's falling off the fucking falls again.
So Tame's story is the one that's been retold the most, but it's worth knowing he wasn't the only Orcadian on record who claimed a meeting like this. Dennison also collected an account from a man he calls Tomas, describing broadly the same creature in broadly the same setting, a shoreline at night, and the folklore of the island of Stronsay. So it's the island of Stronsay.
Okay.
In particular, clusters around the Nuckelavee more thickly than most of the other islands, to the point where some later folklorists treat Stronsay as something close to its home territory within the archipelago.
Okay.
So I want to be careful here about what that clustering does and does not tell us. It's not evidence of an actual creature. What it is evidence of is a genuinely shared regional belief, specific enough in its details, the fused body, the single eye, the freshwater rule, that it was clearly circulating as an agreed upon description rather than being reinvented by scratch, by every individual teller. So that kind of consistency is actually one of the more interesting things folklorists look for. It's a story that's genuinely deeply believed and tends to stay remarkably stable in its core mechanics, even as the surface details drift. And the Nuckelavee holds its shape about as well as anything in Scottish folk record. There's one more Nuckelavee story I want to tell you.
Okay.
Okay? Because it's the one that, for me, clearly shows this legend doing its real cultural job. It involves an industry rather than a monster encounter.
Okay.
Through the late 18th and into the 19th century, kelp burning was a massive part of the Orcadian economy. Islanders harvested seaweed, dried it, and burned it down into a dense ash used to make soda ash, which was essential at the time for glassmaking and soap production on the mainland. It was a brutal, smoky, low-paying job, and it reshaped the coastline and the local economy for decades, right up until cheaper synthetic alkali products made the whole industry collapse in the 1820s. And it left a lot of Orcadian households suddenly worse off. I mean, they were already worse off, but then they became even more worse. In the folklore, the Nuckelavee hated it. The story goes that it viewed the burning of kelp along its shoreline as a desecration of the sea itself, and that a particularly bad outbreak of mortishing was directly attributed to its fury after a heavy burning season, especially associated with Stronsay, which was one of the busiest kelp-burning islands in the archipelago at the industry's peak. What you're looking at here isn't really a story about a monster's personal taste in industry. It's a community processing a genuinely disruptive economic and environmental shift. The smoke, the stink, and a changed coastline through the only narrative framework powerful enough to hold much anxiety. And I want to underline how real that upheaval actually was, because it's easy to skate past economic shift, as an abstraction. At the height of the kelp trade, entire households restructured their year around it. Whole stretches of shoreline were given over to it, and landlords in some cases actively pushed tenants towards kelp labor because it was more profitable for the estate than traditional farming. So they were making people abandon farming and do kelp.
Yeah.
Right. So regardless of what it did to the people doing the burning, in the 1820s, cheaper alkali production on the mainland made the whole industry collapse in like a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Households that had reorganized, their entire livelihood around this work were left with nothing to replace it. When your livelihood's being reshaped and then abruptly ended by forces you don't control and you can't even see because it's on the mainland, and your animals are dying at a worse rate than usual in that same stretch of years, it's not hard to see why those two facts got braided together into one very angry sea demon, punishing a desecration. That demon in that reading isn't really angry about the smoke. He's standing in for that economic catastrophe nobody in Orkney had the vocabulary to describe in any other term.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to look at the Nuckelavee next to its closest relative for a second. Scottish and Irish folklore both have water horses. The Kelpie is the most famous. It's the shape-shifting spirit, usually appearing as a beautiful black horse that lures a rider onto its back, at which point the rider's hands stick fast to its hide and it drags them down into a loch to drown. The Each-uisge, the water horse of the Highlands and Islands more broadly as a close cousin, often considered more dangerous, associated with sea and loch alike. Both of these creatures are lethal, and neither of them are skinless. And crucially, both of them in different tellings across different regions occasionally have an off-ramp. A Kelpie that's caught and bridled can sometimes be tamed, even put to work. Some ballads give you a version of a water horse that can be reasoned with, avoided by the clever, occasionally even outsmarted for the good.
Mm-hmm.
The Nuckelavee doesn't get that treatment anywhere on record. There is no bridle trick. There is no bargain. Its one weakness isn't cleverness, it's geography. A line you can put your body on the correct side of if you're fast enough and you know the rule ahead of time. Everything else about encountering it is pure, unmodified horror. And I think that makes it the most honest member of the water horse family.
Yeah.
In a strange way, it doesn't pretend that the danger might be beautiful. It just tells you right up front, I'm exactly what I am.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a bad day for you.
Yes.
You should have ran. It's too late now.
Yeah, you're done.
I'm right here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm biting you.
Ow.
Biting your head off.
Yep.
Or maybe just, your toes.
I find that these things, there's a lot of horse mythology that comes from water. And this is where I get very sad once again on my educational soapbox about how we don't know much about words. Not everybody. A lot of people are highly educated, but there's a whole bunch of people who don't know. And they don't understand that, horse hippocampus is just traditionally related to water. Poseidon was the god who created horses.
Yeah.
And so it's like this is an old mythology.
Oh, it's not for nothing that the waves are considered, the manes of horses.
Yeah. And hippopotamus is literally water horse.
Big old fat chunky water horse.
Fat old chunky water horse.
They're adorable.
I love them. They're evil.
Don't get anywhere near them.
Hurt you so bad,
yes.
But I would hug them so much.
They are not the Nuckelavee in this case.
No, but I would hug them too. Not a Nuckelavee. The hippo.
So it's worth noting that the Nuckelavee operates on an entirely different scale than its cousins. Like a Kelpie or an Eich-uisge is dangerous to an individual. Okay? It wants one rider, one victim, one drowning, one beer. The Nuckleavee's damage is communal and slow. A blighted field, a season of dead livestock, a plague that moves through an entire island's herd.
Mm-hmm.
It's a meaningful difference in what kind of fear each creature is built to hold. The water horse stories are more about the danger of a single bad decision, getting on the wrong horse, trusting the wrong stranger by a lock. Welcome, weary traveler. The Nuckelavee is about the danger of forces entirely outside anyone's decision-making at all. Weather, disease, economic collapse, the kinds of threats no amount of personal cleverness protects you from. I think that's part of why it reads so much bleaker than its relatives. It's not a cautionary tale about a mistake you could have avoided. It's a cautionary tale about living somewhere genuinely, bad.
Oh, yeah.
It's in a bad area. You're in the worst possible neighborhood for all these things to happen.
Yeah.
This is where the worst outcomes were never entirely in your hands to begin with. Before I get into what I actually think about all of this, I want to zoom out one more time because the Nuckelavee isn't an isolated case. Cultures that lived through unexplained epidemic disease before germ theory gave anyone a mechanical explanation for why illnesses moved the way it did, tended to independently arrive at a very similar solution. You give the disease a body, and usually give that body breath or touch as a weapon. Since contagion generally does travel that way, even if nobody understood why yet. So you see versions of this shape all over the world. Plague spirits with poisonous breath appear in East Asian folklore. In parts of West Africa and its diaspora traditions, illnesses sometimes are attributed to spirits whose passing near a household is what sickens it. European plague folklore is full of figures who walk from town to town, marking doors, spreading contagion by proximity rather than contact. None of those traditions were talking to each other when they built these figures. They arrived at very similar structures independently because they were all doing the same underlying work. They were taking something invisible, unpredictable, and very terrifying and giving it a shape a human mind could actually hold on to and reason about. The Nuckelavee poisoned breath drifting over pasture land fits that pattern almost exactly. It's Orkney's specific local answer to a question nearly every pre-scientific culture on Earth had to answer for itself. So I find that more compelling than the idea that Orcadians simply made up a scary story for its own sake. Mm-hmm. I do not think that's the case. This is a recurring cross-cultural human response to a real epistemic gap.
Yes.
And the Nuckelavee is what that response looked like on a treeless, wind-scoured archipelago at the edge of the North Sea. So, here's where I land on this one. Speaking as someone who practices witchcraft in a fully secular frame, no literal demons on my personal roster of things that I believe are currently real. I don't think a skinless horse demon rose out of the North Sea in the 19th century and took a man's hat off his head. I want to say that plainly. Because I never want you to walk away from the show thinking that I'm asking you to believe the literal creature was real. Mm-hmm. I don't think that. And I don't think I'd be doing you a disservice of pretending otherwise.
Yeah.
What I do think is that this story is doing enormous necessary work for the people who told it. And I don't think it's just a metaphor is a respectful enough way to describe that work. Before germ theory, before anyone understood how disease actually moved through a herd or a household, communities still needed a way to talk about epidemic illness that wasn't just silence and helplessness. And the Nuckelavee gave Orcadians a shared vocabulary for that dread. It gave them a seasonal logic for the real risk. Winter is when you're most exposed. Stay off the shore road at night. It gave them a way to process that genuine economic upheaval, the collapse of the kelp industry, without having to absorb the raw powerlessness of watching your income disappear because of a chemical process happening in a factory you'll never ever see in your life. And it gave children specifically a rule simple enough to actually remember and follow. Salt on one side, fresh on the other. Never get caught in between. That's not naive thinking. That's a community doing something sophisticated with the tools they had. And honestly, that's most of what folk magic is. In my experience, then and now, it's rarely actually about controlling outcomes in some literal mechanical sense. It's giving people a structure, a ritual, a story, a boundary to draw, so that an unpredictable and often hostile world becomes something you can hold in your hands instead of something that just happens to you. Mm-hmm. I don't need to believe in the demon to recognize that the practice built around it, the naming taboo, the freshwater rule, the seasonal caution was doing real psychological and social work. Being skeptical of the literal claim and being respectful of the function are not in tension with each other. I'd argue you can't actually do good folklore work at all unless you hold both at once. And I'll go a step further, actually, because I think there's a failure mode on both sides of this that's worth naming. One failure mode is credulity, taking the Nuckelavee as literal zoological fact, which nobody sensible is asking you to do, and which I'm certainly not doing here. But the opposite failure mode, the one I actually see more often from educated, well-meaning people, is a kind of flat dismissiveness that treats every piece of historical folk belief as a quaint mistake, made by people who simply didn't know better yet. And I don't think that's fair to them. I don't think it's even accurate.
No.
The people telling these stories are not confused about whether horses have skin. They knew exactly what they were doing when they built a monster this specific, this consistent, and this rule-bound. They were encoding the real information in the only durable format available to them before literacy was universal, before science had answers for epidemic disease. It was a story you can tell around a fire and have a 6-year-old repeat back correctly a week later. Historically speaking, a remarkably effective information storage technology. I'd hold it in higher regard than we usually do. And I get asked occasionally what a story like this actually has to do with practicing witchcraft in a modern secular sense, given that I'm not out there trying to summon a sea demon or ward off one with a specific herb bundle. Mm-hmm. And the honest answer is that most of what I do isn't really about the demon at all. It's about the discipline underneath the demon story, the habit of looking directly at what's actually frightening you, naming it specifically instead of letting it stay a formless dread, and then building some kind of practice or boundary, a ritual, a rule you can actually follow, and then around that fear instead of just carrying it around unprocessed. Mm-hmm. Orkney's fear was disease, storm, and economic ruin, and their practice was a story with a strict geography built into it. My fears, and probably a lot of yours, are different. Different century, different threats, mostly not shore roads and livestock plague anymore, but the underlying move, take the shapeless dread, give it a shape you can actually study and find its one rule, its one weakness, mm-hmm. and its one escape route, and then teach that rule to the people you care about, is, I think, one of the oldest and most durable pieces of technology human beings have ever built for managing fear. We don't need a literal Nuckelavee to think that's worth carrying forward. It's programming, social programming.
No, I fully agree with you with that, because we do live right now in a very uncertain world, and how many families out there have plans and ideas of. So as an educator, I have a classroom that I have to protect, and so I tell my students, we don't go out the door. We don't go past the blue line. Why don't we go past the blue line? Because you can't see out the little peephole, even though they can look out the window, and you can't see who's on the other side of the door. They're 4 and 5. They're like, oh, okay. Because our door doesn't lock going out. So they could very easily pull the handle, push the door open, and go. But we tell them, no, you don't know who's out there. So you give them that fear. Not that I'm trying to scare them, but I'm trying to keep them safe. So I get what you're saying. Is we even now, whether we're not really creating these mythological, monsters, but we're still using what we know to create boundaries and rules.
It's, to me, actually a good thing, I think, mm-hmm. is that we have not really, even though we've evolved into so many different things, we have technology, we have science, and despite all of these things, we still have a very alive oral tradition that we just don't recognize mm-hmm. as such, because once we impart the oral tradition, we write it down and we make rules around it and we legislate them.
Mm-hmm.
They become laws, or they become rules for your school or rules for your classroom, and they're written so that you can reread them, but they start as oral tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk to your children and you explain to them beyond the words that are written on the paper. You give them something to hold on to, handles to the things that they're not that they're unsure of.
Yeah. Because I do work with ones who don't, my babies don't read, they're babies. But they can see a piece of blue tape and they know, well, there's my boundary.
Right.
And then, that could be something that you could put into words if you're passing that information on to maybe a new teacher who is struggling with keeping children from escaping, for runners and things like that,
Well, while things have changed, they're very much the same. We have a lot of things. When the pandemic happened,
Mm-hmm.
We had COVID, and we generated rules around that. And sure, a lot of things were written down, but we passed them down to our children orally. We shared with other people our fears.
Yeah.
And we generated these things that would help us along the way. Our totem, a mask would get you through.
Yeah.
And sure, they work, but they're not intended to stop a disease.
No.
But they are a totem you can carry.
Mm-hmm.
They are something that protects you.
And you could explain that, yes, if everybody wore it, blah, 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 blah.
Right. There's more filtering to be had.
But,
yes.
Yeah, you're right. If you had your jab, you knew you were going to be able to pull out your vaccination card and you'd be able to go places and do things because you could prove that you were at least significantly more safe than somebody who had not.
Right. So these are things that we are assigning science to, but in a lot of ways, it's still folklore.
Yeah.
It's the new folklore, same as the old folklore, because the old folklore thought it was science too.
Well, yeah.
The Nuckelavee has built a bit of a second life in recent years. It shows up in fantasy fiction in a handful of video games and monster compendiums. In an Orkney's own storytelling festivals, where it's told appropriately as the centerpiece of the darker end of the local repertoire. I think that's exactly right. Some stories are meant to comfort you. This one was never trying to. What strikes me the most, coming back to it now, is how little the story asks you to actually do. It doesn't ask for an offering.
Nope.
It doesn't ask you to learn a riddle or to outsmart anybody. It asks you to remember one plain fact about your own coastline and to act on it when it counts. Know where the fresh water is. Don't let anything cut you off from it. That's the whole spell, if you want to call it that. Not power over the danger, just the location of your own exit. I think that's actually a pretty good description of what most real protective folk practice looks like, once you strip the drama out of it. It's rarely about defeating the thing that scares you. It's about knowing your own ground well enough that the thing that scares you has fewer places left to catch you. Orkney's version of that lesson happens to come wrapped in a skinless horse demon with a taste for kelp smoke. Somebody else's version looks like a salt line across a doorway, or a specific street you don't walk down after dark, or a phone call you make before you get in a car with a stranger. Different costumes, same instinct. Name the danger, learn its one weakness, and pass that down to the next person walking the shore road after you. So if there's a version of this that travels with you after today, I hope it's not just the image, as unsettling as it is. I hope it's the shape underneath the image, a community that looked at a real danger, ongoing, unpredictable set of dangers, disease, storm, economic collapse, and instead of leaving that fear formless, it gave it a body, it gave a rule and a name that they mostly refused to say out loud. And that's the Nuckelavee.
Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, I mean, I like that because that one is different from the traditional cryptids that we've talked about in the past. not the Mothman, because in the Mothman there's never any bargaining because no one ever spoke to it. It didn't interact per se.
It was more of a harbinger.
Yeah, definitely
watcher.
a harbinger.
Sure.
So yeah, no, I think that's pretty interesting.
I think it's just another facet of the things. We have our watchers like the Mothman. We have our benevolent beings. We have our malevolent beings. In this case, it's kind of malevolent, but also almost a guardian of things.
Well, it seems...
Not benevolently. It's obviously going to try to kill the thing.
Yeah.
But what it does do, it jealously guards its territory.
Well, like you were saying how it was angry over the burning of the kelp, and all I could think of is it's an ecological issue. So
could be,
and it could
very
be,
much.
It could be that the people with money were, making the farmers and everything, like you said, burn the kelp, and the farmers didn't want to do that. They wanted to stick with what they were doing, but they had no choice. And this becomes, they either knew the importance of having those kelp beds, or B, just the taking away of their own livelihood. And so it becomes this economic / ecological
And
issue.
they may have not even known the direct impact.
Maybe not, but yeah.
sensed it because they've lived there their whole lives.
Yeah, you don't want to
Once
fuck
they
with
start
the natural.
seeing fish disappear because the kelp is gone, they notice those things. They have less coming in from the sea than they did before.
Oh yeah, and even though they're farmers,
they're dying at a disproportionate rate because of kelp lung. I'll say I'm just making that up.
Yeah, I don't know what
I'm sure burning
the soda
had a
ash
lot of problems.
probably had an issue.
Yeah. So their lives changed to this it was already hard to begin with. Their lives were very hard on this island, these islands, many islands.
Yes.
They were scraping by. They probably had a lot of joy in their lives on top of this. I don't really know the Orkney people.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I can't imagine you lived in a place and didn't find joy. But it's also mixed with a hard life. They were scraping by. They were making do, but just barely. And then to be used by the mainland as captive labor because they cannot leave.
Yeah.
They can go to the mainland, but they're kind of marked as the islanders. So even if they go there, they'll be treated the same.
Yeah.
They're captive labor. They're paid, but at a pittance.
What is it with the United Kingdom, who is an island, and how they treat their little islands around them?
Well, you don't start out colonizers until you colonize the people around you, and then you go out from that.
I know. I'm just saying
it
it's
gets
just
to be worse and worse.
Treat them so poorly.
Sure, but it's all a predatory type of situation. But I think the Nuckelavee gave them a voice. It gave them a voice to the fears. It is much harder to deal with a fear that is unnamed, that is amorphous, and it doesn't have direction. It's much easier to have that thing that you're afraid of, that you can name and say, this is my issue. Mine is a dentist. I have two fears in my life. One is extreme heights, and the other one is dentists.
Yeah.
And I've had to deal with one or the other my entire life. Lately, the dentist, which you've helped me through. We name our fears. And it's not about whether or not you are able to deal with the fear. It's that you're able to face the fear and not let it overcome you. If you can manage your fear, that and naming it is a big part of that. The Nuckelavee gives life to that fear. It gives something there for you to fight.
I'm afraid of the dark, and you put up with me by having little nightlights all over the house.
I put nightlights everywhere. We have lights outside now.
Because I am afraid of the dark.
And that's fine.
I don't like what I can't see.
Honestly, the dogs are also...
Yeah, our dog
our biggest dog is...
She's afraid
of the dark.
She's my baby.
So
this has been Between Myth and Belief. If you like what you heard and you have a tale or two to share, not just about today's topic, but about any odd or scary story that you'd like to hear us talk about, you can send us an email at betweenmythandbelief@gmail.com, or you can join us on Instagram and Blue Sky at Myth and Belief. Please make sure to follow and subscribe to Vote. Please make sure to follow and subscribe to Between Myth and Belief wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to check out our other podcast, Cozy Quilt Cinema, if you like movies and you like to talk about how they make you feel, at cozyquiltcinema.com. So until next time, bye.